Greetings, my friends. So, the Midah of the week is Gevurah. That's the Sefirat of the week, and all of the days are aspects of Gevurah. So, let's understand what Gevurah is about, and let's understand how it's meaningful, how it can be challenging, how we can transform it, how we can live it through us, and how that actually improves and transforms our lives. Before we go there, though, I just want to speak generally, just to reinforce this notion that all of the Sefirot, all of the Midot, they are infinite and they are concrete and practical. They speak to the particular details of day-to-day life in our bodies, in our emotions, in our minds, in our speech, in our behavior, and everything we see in the natural world. And they are sourced in the presence, the light, the love, the source of life that is beyond time, beyond measurement, beyond space. And so as such, they're a connector. And the reflection of Sefirat HaOmer is an opportunity to do the particular work in the details of our lives to understand the midot and how they're reflecting in our day-to-day existence, how they're reflecting in our lives, and are they aligned with our highest purpose. And then Sefirat is also an opportunity for a meditation and for a prayerful connection to the source of every midah, because the source of life is emanating all of reality through these Sefirot, through the midot. And so the meditation of resting into that the source of life is actually supporting me through this midah. My desire and my efforts and intentions to refine and elevate this midah or this sefirah are supported from the source of all reality. So by bringing those two together, the universal and the particular, that's actually the healing and the fixing. We live in a world of fragmentation, and you could say that the suffering and difficulty that we have as individuals in a society is about fragmentation. And if we really understand what the HaOmer, the sages, are telling us, all of that fragmentation is expressed and propagated from the initial fragmentation that happened in Gan Eden. And when consciousness fragmented from itself, when an independent sense of consciousness happened, when they ate the apple and suddenly they realized and they felt shame and they felt blame. These are aspects of Gevurah. And so that's where separation began. And that's where a lot of our challenges stem from, is that initial separation in consciousness that every one of us embodies to a certain extent in our lives. And so the idea is to reflect into these things and more over time, see that in all my particulars, there's an emanation of godliness. And that's the ultimate healing and connectivity that brings us to a place of healing. So Gevurah, what's going on with Gevurah? It gets translated as strength, as discipline, as power. There's psukim that get associated, verses that get associated with Gevurah, like when you hear thunder, there's a bracha that says Gevuraso Koahu Gevurato Male Olam, that God's power and strength fill the world when you hear thunder. We say, who is a Gibor? One who is someone who has the quality of Gibor, someone who can overcome his base nature and overcome Koveshet HaYetzer Shelo. So Gevurah is power, Gevurah is strength, Gevurah is discipline. And okay, that's true. Let's think about it more conceptually also and try to understand what it means for us as individuals. Gevurah could be understood as kind of the polar opposite of Chesed. Chesed is a flowing forth, an expression. Gevurah is the containment or restraint of that expression. There's Chesed and there's Gevurah. There's giving and there's taking. The core of Gevurah is taking. But Gevurah is also boundary. And so one of my chaverim, who's a brilliant, creative mind, likes to describe Chesed as a flowing stream, and Gevurah as like the banks of the stream. And it's a beautiful metaphor because the Gevurah contains the Chesed. It actually shapes the Chesed. What I don't like about the metaphor is that I've spent a lot of time in rivers and streams, and they just go the way they go. Sometimes you'll see a stream that starts like that, and 3 years later, like the riverbank has cut the Gevurah. And we want the Gevurah to appropriately enable the expression of the Chesed and not have the Chesed overrun the banks. If you have excess Chesed relative to Gevurah, that means your energy is just flying everywhere and you're not focused. You can't do what you want to do in the world. Gevurah is what gives you the ability to take your creativity and your love and your appropriate, healthy, holy desire for self-expression and give it focus and give it a direction for it to go in. So other aspects to understand about Gevurah is that it's also about discernment. It's about looking at the world and seeing and discerning what's appropriate and what's useful and what's actually serving our higher needs, which makes sense because that's how we actually make a choice about what we want to express in the world, how we want to express our stuff. The foundation of reality, as the Kabbalists talk about it, is that Chesed actually gives rise to Gevurah. Chesed flows into the world and then comes back and leaves behind a container or a shape. And then it flows back into that shape, and the shape thickens and deepens. And Gevurah is what makes up the pathways, the pipelines by which the godly influx happens in the world, by which everything is created in every moment. So Gevurah is the container that allows the expression of light and love and self and beingness expressed into the world. But the light and love and expressiveness shapes the Gevurah. The whole point of that Gevurah is that it's able to actually contribute to the expression of that. There's a wonderful Talmud Chacham named Rabbi Matis Weinberg. He likes to use the metaphor of a samurai as Gevurah. The samurais were these ancient warriors in medieval Japan. They were incredible swordsmen and army guys, but they were poets and they were creative. And their devotion was to protect the emperor, the samurai of the samurais, as I understand it. They were protectors, but they did it in ways that were appropriate, and they understood appropriateness. Gevurah is the quality that actually creates our physical reality. When Hashem wanted to create the world, he drew himself back. He made a container, he made a shape, and flowed that expression into it. When we wake up in the morning, the first mitzvah in the Torah is strengthen yourself like a lion and get up in the morning. Gevurah has to do with the transition from not existing to existing. Because all of coming into existence, whether it's when we wake up in the morning or the creation of the world or the building of a new project, depends on definition. It depends on focus. Gevurah is what allows us to create. Gevurah can be challenging. Many of us have gotten the wrong kind of Gevurah. Like any midah, it can come in the world in tikkun or pogem. Tikkun is when things are aligned and appropriate and perfect. And pogem is when they're sullied somehow. They're not straight. They're not right. If somebody is angry, if somebody is narcissistic and self-centered and abusive, if somebody is profoundly anxious and imparts anxiety and fear into others, that's an inappropriate expression of Gevurah. Many people have been harmed by trauma, and it's very hard for them to relate to the midah of Gevurah because Gevurah, anger, fear, boundaries, excess discipline, discipline without unconditional love. A healthy being grows from love and honor. Love is, I love you. Honor is, I respect you. And those need to be in balance with each other. So for many people, myself included, when I was in my early adulthood, it was hard for me to handle boundaries and discipline. I really needed to work on it over time to learn that actually boundaries are good. Structure is good. But it wasn't easy because I had a natural resistance to it for a variety of reasons that I don't want to talk about right now. But we all have these things where we can't see the good in a midah. And we might see an aspect of a midah in another person, and we might be reminded of an inappropriate expression of that same midah. and it might kind of scare us away from embodying discipline. I actually heard back from a couple of readers this week that, yeah, the stuff about Gevurah is helpful. Gevurah is hard for me. Is Gevurah hard for you? So sometimes Gevurah is difficult, and sometimes Gevurah is not seem like, oh yeah, I want to embody that Midah. I want love. I want to feel good. But as I'm speaking about it, we need the structure to contain and focus and express the love. So how do we work with that? How do we understand the positive aspects of Gevurah and distinguish them from the negative aspects? One of the things that's really important to understand is that, like, the root of Gevurah is fear. There's love, there's fear. The root of Gevurah is fear, or maybe Gevurah is the root of fear. In any event, there's lower fear and there's upper fear. Lower fear is if I'm scared of something in my environment, or I'm scared of a wild animal, or I'm scared of somebody, I'm scared of consequences or punishment. Those are things that can be useful forces, but they can be excessive and destructive. And then there's an upper fear. There's elevated fear. There's the vigilance that has to do with recognizing there's some really important value or goodness or love, and that in order for me to connect to that, I need to be vigilant and pay really careful attention. If I'm trying to make a beautiful piece of music or paint something or write a beautiful letter, the details matter. I spoke about this in the Chesed Shebe Gevurah, because recognizing that the Chesed is why I want Gevurah, why I want to have an elevated aspect of Gevurah, where I'm awake and I'm alert and I'm paying attention. I'm doing exactly what I need to be doing to express good things. The other aspect of Gevurah that's really positive is that's what helps us meet challenges in life. The Sfarim talk about, Rabbi Nachman and the Kabbalah Sfarim, they talk about how we meet challenges. We've got challenges that are the circumstances, things not going our way, difficult problems and challenges, and those are Gevurot. They call them Gevurot. And how do we meet that? Do I run away from it? Or do I actually recognize there's Gevurot here? I need to strengthen my Gevurah to have precision to meet it and understand it. And maybe that means I need to do tshuva. Maybe it means I need to pay careful attention to what's happening, so I do things right the next time instead of making a careless mistake. So on a practical, simple level, Gevurah is what lets us deal with difficult circumstances in the world. On a deeper level, Gevurah is the power that lets us. Our basic tenet of our emunah is that Hashem is good and does good and wants to do good to us. But sometimes that good shows up in a wrapper that doesn't feel so good. So what do we do in that circumstance? It's Gevurah, and we need to meet it with Gevurah. The tzaddikim talk all over the place about tzimtzum. Tzimtzum is when things are constricted and they're hard. The light is hidden, things are dark. We go up and we go down. But sov v'shov. When we're in a place of shov, we're going to meet Gevurot. How do we deal with that? We find our own capacity to mitzam same ourselves and meet the tzimtzum, and by doing that, we actually evoke the light. There's beautiful, in Chazal, there's a discussion that in the end of days, Hashem's going to come to the Avot, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and he's going to say, look, your children, my children have sinned, your children have sinned. What should we do? Avraham, who we associate with Chesed, is going to say, well, if they did something wrong, they need to pay the price. Yaakov says the same thing. Yitzchak, on the other hand, says, they're your children, and you made them with a yetzer, you made things difficult, so you should forgive them. We understand Yitzchak as laughter. Laughter, the surprise of laughter. When things are difficult, and suddenly, that's what it's about. We laugh. That's Yitzchak. We associate with Pachad. We associate with Gevurah. So Gevurah is not a bad thing. Gevurah is challenging to work with. It's not always pleasant, but it's this incredible energy that actually lets us transform difficult things into good things. So, the invitation is to meditate on Gevurah in the practical and in the klal. Think about the aspects of Gevurah, whether it's Chesed, Gevurah, Sefirat, Netzach, Hod Yesod, and how they help complete and transform and integrate Gevurah in a positive way to transform whatever aspects of confusion we have in Gevurah, transform them into light. So remembering that Gevurah, the difficulties and challenges, it's all from the source of life. And that can help refine it and elevate it and help elevate us and bring us forward. Thanks so much for watching.